Well, hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to do just a little brief thing on U.S. World War I production, and I've got some of my World War I memorabilia that I've collected, buttons and color tabs and World War I theater metal, and just other little things that pertain to World War I. And anyway, I just want to talk about Colt's production and what it was like for them during World War I. And I just feel that it's not possible to really discuss the 1911 without including the First World War in this. And because this is, of course, the new sidearm to the U.S. military, and its design would prove to be very, very effective in the incredibly brutal combat encountered during the trench warfare. And this pistol was so effective in its use that it was issued with 4 magazines with each pistol as it went overseas. And the use, I think it's fair to say the use of the sidearm in World War I was probably the most it was ever used in U.S. military history. All the frontline officers and enlisted men in the U.S. cavalry, field artillery, tank corps, signal corps, and machine gun companies were armed with a pistol. Not necessarily in 1911. A lot of them had revolvers, different Colts, Smith & Wesson. And yeah, everybody had a pistol there, pretty much. Most officers and non-commissioned officers in the infantry, they were armed with a pistol. And although in 1916 the American people wanted to stay out of World War I and European entanglements and their war, the U.S. military began to frantically gear up for the possible involvement in the war. There was the National Defense Act of June 3rd, 1916, and from that the Ordnance Department placed an order for 18,000 Model 1911s with 1 extra magazine each. And then 18,000 spare magazines on top of that. Now, this order was initially denied by Congress, and it was later approved by the military. And it was later approved, and the military received its first shipment in late September. Now, there were also some changes for the pistol in this contract. They wanted the lanyard loop removed at this point in time, so that's where we see that disappear. And then the radius of the rear sight was to be enlarged. Now, Colts was already doing that. Springfield Armory had a smaller radius on theirs, and then they wanted to see a larger radius, but Colts, of course, was already doing that. Now, that was it for the changes, and there was nothing else required. Now, the price of the pistol was $15 per pistol and 50 cents per magazine. And in mid-September, there was another order of 45,000 pistols with 2 spare magazines placed on September 9th. And there were a few other small orders with delivery up until April 5th of 1917, with the last recognized pre-war serial number being 209,586. Now, the total number of pistols delivered to the U.S. military prior to the start of World War I was approximately 138,000. Now, the reason it wasn't 209,586 that would follow the sequence of serial numbers from the beginning of production was there was a gap created by the numbers assigned to Springfield Armory, and those weren't filled when these halted their pistol production in 1917. And let's see, now there was only about 68,000 pistols available for the regular army at the beginning of the war. The military had allowed a large number of the pistols to be sold to military officers, government officials, and foreign dignitaries. It was so many, it was about 35,000. And of the 138,000, of course, 15,037 went to the Navy, 2,850 went to the Marine Corps, and 16,110 went to standing militias. Now, Colts had anticipated the need for more pistol production capacity, and they started building a new building in April of 1917 just for 1911 production. And so the General Munitions Board approached Colts in May of 1917 to inquire about purchasing an additional 500,000 pistols. So Colts started tool up for production in 1917. That was June of 17. Now, Colts, they relied on job shops to produce certain parts for their pistols. Actually, it was quite a few of the internal parts. And some of these shops, there's quite a few of them, but some that you might recognize would be Pratt Whitney, Royal Typewriter, Brown and Sharp. And so of these parts, the barrel, slide stop, plunger tube, safety lock, grip safety, ejector, mainspring cap, firing pin, recoil spring guide. I mean, I could go on, but I think you get the point. And during production for World War I, Colt ran into production problems. There were so many delays in delivery that Major Joseph G. Woodbury paid the Colts plant a visit to determine what was wrong. And some of the things he noted were lack of tooling to produce more than daily requirements, lack of production records. There was also a lack of accounting of small inventory parts on hand. And then the rampant politics in the shop organization contributed to production slowdown. Now, another thing that he was suspicious of, there was a Mr. Otto Kurt, Colt's chief inspector, and he was rejecting parts for minuscule reasons. And those parts would often go off to either British contract pistols or they would go off to government model ones. And the major was suspicious of Mr. Kurt because he was born in Germany and found to have pro-Germany sentiments prior to the war. But it was determined he was a loyal Colt employee just doing his job. Very particular he must have been. But anyway, one of the other reasons was there were also Army Ordnance personnel that were not clear of their duties. So after his visit, production was sped up. And he must have kicked a few rear ends to get things going. But anyway, Colt was far enough behind that they were ultimately fined for not meeting production quotas. Colt's president protested this by writing a letter, and he noted that Colts had used many valuable man hours providing other arms manufacturers with information and assistance in beginning their Model 1911 production programs, and Remington UMC being one of them. And the Ordnance Department, U.S. Army Ordnance Department, was sympathetic to Colts, and they helped protest this fine, and they recommended that the fine be reduced by 75%. Now, according to Ordnance records, approximately 412,000 pistols of the 500,000 were produced before the contract was terminated at the end of the war in 1919, or after the war ended, I should say. And there were several thousand finished and unfinished receivers produced by Colts and other manufacturers, and these were reclaimed by the Salvage Ordnance Board in the 1920s. Now, those went to Springfield Armory, and then in 1942 they were forwarded to Ithaca Gun Company to produce approximately 6,200 Model 1911A1s, and those were mostly Colt frames. So that's pretty much just a basic rundown of the production history of Colt's manufacturing during World War I. So that's probably about all I'm going to cover on that tonight. And there's the other pistol manufacturers, Springfield Armory and Remington. I'm going to go into in another video and cover each one of those by themselves for those of you who are interested in learning some of this history. And we'll go ahead and we'll just close this video with that. So, hey, thanks for tuning in and watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good evening.